وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يقربنا منك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. O Allah, Bismillah, in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. All praise be to Allah. Salutations and greeting be upon His Messenger Muhammad and his family and companions. O Allah, we ask you for knowledge which will benefit us, and to benefit us through what you have already taught us, and to increase us in knowledge which will bring us closer to you. Allahumma la sahla illa ma ja'altahu sahla. O Allah, nothing is easy except that which you make easy. Wa anta ya hayyu ya qayyum taj'alul hazna idha shi'ta sahlan sahla. And you, O the ever-living, the self-subsisting, can make the difficult easy. Allahumma anshur alayna rahmatak waftah alayna hikmatak. O Allah, open the doors of wisdom for us and enshroud us in your mercy. وَلَا حَوْلَ وَلَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ الْعَلِيِّ الْعَظِيمِ وَصَلَّى اللَّهُ وَسَلَّمَ وَبَارَكَ عَلَى سَيِّدِنَا مُحَمَّدٍ وَعَلَى آلِهِ وَصَحْبِهِ أَجْمَعِينَ وَبَعْدَ. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And welcome to you all to our drop-in class on the book of knowledge of Imam Al-Ghazali rahimahullahu ta'ala wa radiya anhu. And there's no prerequisites, so it's good to have you here. If you're new, mashallah, welcome. We hope you attend more of these drop-in sessions and you benefit from them, inshallah ta'ala. Last week we didn't have a class. Anybody know why? Yes? Michael Sidi Haroon, mashallah. Spent some time with him afterwards. Amazing person. We had a book launch last week, or we were part of the book tour and launch of Heart's Turn by Michael Sugic. Somebody who embraced Islam many years ago in America, and he lives now in Istanbul. He's lived other places in the world, he mentioned, but he lives in Istanbul at the moment. He's in the UK currently doing a tour and promoting his book, Heart's Turn. So I've been reading this book and I've been sharing some of the stories. And one relates to today, and this is what I've been discovering, that, subhanAllah, everything's connected. So you've got the translation here, right? Who's the translator? Yep, he's in the book. Kenneth is in the book that we launched, or we were part of the launch last week. So I was reading through the book, and there's a story about Michael and Kenneth. Kenneth Honeycamp, the translator here, and Michael something, I forgot his name. So his actual name, Kenneth, is Abdul Rahman, because I read his story. And he embraced Islam in Pakistan, in the Swat Valley. So he went there with his friend, and they were escaping from America and everything, and they were like meeting different people, this, that, the other, and they just happened to get into this valley and into this place. He talks about his bus journeys and how all of them are hanging off the bus like they do in Pakistan. There's people on the top, people on the side. So it's really, really, really amazing story. There's lots of stages to the story about Christianity, Catholicism, his whole journey, etc. But in the end, he embraces Islam. In the end, and he says, when I embrace Islam, everybody starts giving me flour and rice and gifts, and I'm living in this little room in the village. And so it's quite an amazing thing. So he said the thing that had impact on him a lot was the adhan, because he was listening to the call to prayer. It was something that he really had a lot of respect for. And he mentions that at one point they were enjoying themselves, smoking ergila. What's ergila? Nargila, as they call it. What do you call it when they go to the bars? The shisha bars. Shisha, that's it. And the adhan started. And it was his turn to have it, but he, out of respect for the adhan, didn't do it. He didn't, he just passed it on to someone else, like he was tweeting all of the adhan. And that was a secret kind of thing, right? When you respect Allah, the call to prayer, Allah's name, the Prophet's name, it has an impact. And he was a Muslim at that time, but he decided to respect the call to prayer and not do this act at that time. And there are many other factors as well. And the funny thing is, Kenneth and his friend Michael, they separated because Michael went back to America kind of thing. But then he decided to come back to Pakistan. And they went other places as well. They went to Afghanistan, through the whole of Afghanistan, and it was a road journey and road trip as well. They went through other countries as well, but they ended up there. But he says that he embraced Islam and his friend embraced Islam, Michael, and they both met up back in but the village that they were in, and his friend Abdul Hadi, Michael's name became Abdul Hadi, got stuck in a village nearby because of the snow and the bus wouldn't come, so he was staying there, and they both met each other. They called each other Michael. He goes, "No, my name's not Michael. My name's Abdul Hadi." He goes, "Oh, my name's not Kenneth. My name's Abdul Rahman." He goes, "Oh, so we realized we both become Muslim. We were on the journey together, but we separated for a few years, and then we came back together and embraced Islam in that time." So it's amazing. The book is amazing in general. I really recommend. Have you read any part of the book, Ali? You have any stories that have touched you, or?
Just the first one, so I'm not really.
So the Shaykh Abdullah Shaifa, I think the first one is. Yeah, mashallah. There's beautiful stories in there, mashallah.
The online stream, for the session will not be broadcast, because there's a lot of people who will be interested.
Yeah. So inshallah, it was recorded but not broadcast. We've got a recording, but we never broadcast it, and obviously we need to see the Michael's permission and stuff, yeah. But we might release a video about the event and stuff, yeah. But we'll speak to him, inshallah, what he wants to do. Yeah, but just thought I'd say that because then when I read that story, in the end it said, Kenneth Honekamp is did it. And it said, oh, his surname was mentioned towards the end. I was like, I'm sure I've seen that name before somewhere. I looked at this book, had it obviously with me, and I thought, oh, subhanAllah, he's the translator, like subhanAllah, it's like so it's weird, right? Because one of the stories I read was about a Muslim, but somebody who was distant from Islam all his life, and it was through calligraphy he, strengthened his faith and came back to the religion, and he had written a book called The Cosmic Script, which is about calligraphy, an amazing book, which I've got at home. So I'm reading through this story. It's an amazing story. He doesn't even know what the Kaaba was. So he was invited to wash the Kaaba, to visit the Kaaba. And he phones his friend. He goes, I've just got a call from Saudi Arabia, and they want me to do something called washing the Kaaba. What's the Kaaba? It's a grown Muslim man from Egypt. He was probably in his 30s, 40s when he got that call. He doesn't know what the Kaaba is. So it's weird, reading about somebody who's, a Muslim but doesn't know what the Kaaba is. It's like, even non-Muslims tend to know what that is, right? But it was post-colonial, post-war Egypt that he lived in, kind of thing, right? So post-Second War, World War. So it was weird, his story. But he wrote that book. So he quoted the book towards the end, and I was like, I've got this book. And I looked at the book, and he said, his name was Ahmad Mustafa and Stefan Spurl, and I mentioned him as well, that he wrote the book with Stefan Spurl, and I opened the page, and the picture of both of them at the front, so I actually got a picture of this particular individual in his book, obviously, and it's a massive book, by the way. This Cosmic Script is like, let me just show you how it is. It's like 4 of these. That's just the front of it. 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. Yep, and it's thick as that. That's volume 1. Like volume 2 is bigger. And so these massive pieces of bricks, I don't know what you call them, right? These big slates of books they used to do in the past, right? But it's all about calligraphy and stuff. And I started reading it then, so I've not really read that big book. I just flicked through it. It's got pictures in, of course, calligraphy and everything. So I was looking through it as well, and it's amazing calligraphy. And what he actually says about calligraphy, I haven't got time to share that today. But it's really amazing. I read that section of the book on Ahmad Mustafa Ahmad. It really is eye-opening towards calligraphy itself, and that was his attachment to Islam. So it wasn't, reading the Quran. It wasn't the understanding of the Quran. It was just the script of the Quran, and there's a secret behind it. He discovered a lot, by the way. A particular mathematician, scientist, Ibn Muqla. Ibn Muqla was one of these great Islamic mathematicians, discoverers, scholars. Ibn Muqla, and he's probably the most expert person on calligraphy and history of Islam. So he'd written books that people today can't understand, and it was this individual that kind of decoded and understood. And he had a dream, and he said in the dream that calligraphy is not a linear; it's a circle within a square. And then from that he went to understand that it's actually 2-dimensional. You've got a line that's got its length, obviously, how long it goes, but it's also got a breadth or a width to it, right? So you have to do calligraphy in both ways. And then it's an amazing story. He did a master's and a PhD, and he was about to fail it, and he went against his own thesis. He scrapped it all. It's an amazing story. But yeah, so that was the connection, through that. So really, the last week's event, which some of you didn't attend, but you should have. Unfortunately, you might not have known about it. Ali, you did attend, right? Hamza, Tariq, were you there? No, ladies, did you attend? MashaAllah, right? So you were there last week. I saw you.
Yeah, no, I was there, Sheikh. What was amazing is that, because even though the presenter spoke about Michael Sukic, I've known about him through Sheikh Hamza Yusuf
Right.
on many of the speeches years and years ago that
Yeah.
talked about somebody who was very learning at the time and he
Embrace Islam.
Shahada.
Yeah, for each other through.
And he spent time with many shuyukh.
Many great men, yeah.
And I never realised
It was him, yeah, until that day, subhanAllah. Right. Yeah, subhanAllah, very humble person and very full of wisdom, knowledge, experience, spirituality, very, amazing person, yeah. So we sat with him afterwards and he was very happy, alhamdulillah. He was thanking everyone who attended and he was very happy with the setup and, alhamdulillah, response that everybody gave, yeah, alhamdulillah. But that was last week and now we move on to this week. Right, so let's get back to our class. So we're on chapter 5 of the Book of Knowledge, where we were talking about the etiquettes of the student last time. So we're talking about the 10 sort of etiquettes of a student or seeker of knowledge. Today we're going to move on to the functions of the teacher, the second part of the chapter, chapter 5. It says here, the title in the translation, an elucidation of the functions of the guide and the teacher. So, what's the role of a teacher? What etiquettes? What are the characteristics that we need to find in teachers or we should have as teachers? But it applies to the student as well. It works both ways. It's a two-way relationship. First of all, Imam Ghazali discusses the method of learning and the acquisition of knowledge in a sense and likens it to earning money, wealth, in the sense that you first have to work, you have to earn your money, you have to work hard, you have to spend time. After you've done your job, you get paid. Right? So that's the whole concept of seeking knowledge. Right? That you have to put effort in, you have to attend the lessons, you have to revise, you have to review, you have to make notes. The whole concept of seeking knowledge, student of knowledge, a student of one of the disciplines. And then he says the next stage is that you accumulate wealth. Right? So now you've got wealth, you work 1 week, 2 weeks, you got a bigger wage. The more wealth you get, the more you can do. The more knowledge you get and the more you store and accumulate, the more it empowers you to do things. So the second stage is that you come to this ability to do things for yourself, right? Because knowledge empowers you. You do have to rely on other people, questions, I'm not sure, you're sure now. Just like wealth, you have to ask people for help or you're dependent on your parents maybe or others around you. But then when you have your own wealth, you become self-reliant. You don't necessarily look towards others. And then the third stage is that you actually use your money to benefit yourself more and more. So now you're just, protecting yourself or not just looking after yourself, you're actually benefiting yourself. You can do more things, the more money you make, the more wealth you have. So the more knowledge you acquire, the more you use your knowledge. It's not necessarily about massive amounts, but the more you use your knowledge, the more you benefit now yourself. The more you actually give yourself rewards, you give yourself spiritual, growth, you give yourself goodness in your life, right? You benefit from the knowledge, acting upon it. And then the fourth stage of wealth and of knowledge, the similarity is that you can benefit others and you can, use your money to help other people and benefit them. Similarly, you can use your knowledge, and you should, this is the final stage, and this is why Imam Ghazali mentions it, is that you should then benefit others. And so when we talk about teaching or, and so forth, although Imam Ghazali's context is within a scholarly level, a very sort of formal level, let's say, student, teacher in an organization, a madrasa or in a Islamic seminary or something, or just in the olden days in the mosque or something, but the official kind of way or the formal kind of way, we could still apply it to any level of education. So it could be that you're teaching your children, it could be that you're teaching your friends, it could be that you're sharing what you learn with others. These etiquettes still apply. So we shouldn't think, because they will be quite, scholarly or targeted at a teacher, like proper formal, kind of qualified teacher. But that's not to say that these etiquettes don't apply to others as well, and that that we don't need to worry about them. We should take them in regard. And then he mentions those that act upon their knowledge and those that don't act upon their knowledge, and how they are like, or what the example is. The teachers, the scholars, the instructors. So he says those that act upon their knowledge and instruct others. Or like, lights of illumination, lamps of light, beacons of light, like the sun that gives light to others and benefits itself. And, like musk, or fragrance that benefits others, but itself was also benefited by its knowledge, by being fragrant itself, as he says. But those that don't act upon their knowledge, yet teach others, some teachers don't do that. Some teachers have that just concept of it's studied, learned, taught, and there's no practical aspect to it or self kind of thing. It's just a case of that's what life is about for that person, whether it's Islamic knowledge or otherwise. It can happen in all fields. It's like, I'll give different examples. I'll mention two of them, which is like a notebook that provides benefit because there's notes on it, but it's just paper itself, and it's devoid of any benefit if you just have a piece of paper. It's not going to get you anywhere. Or it's like the wick of the candle, where there's a flame burning on it, but it's consuming the wick itself. So it's benefiting others with the light. That's a benefit for others, but itself is dying out, is wasting away. And he quotes a line of poetry here: "I became as though I were the wick of a lamp ignited, giving light for people, burning in its own flame," as one of the poets said. So that's just an example of those who teach and act themselves, those who teach and don't act upon the knowledge themselves, right? Allah make us amongst the first category. Then he says, whatever level of it, whatever manner one is getting instruction, it's a momentous task. It's a massive thing in life. It's a big responsibility. And it needs to be understood, it needs to be respected, and really the graveness of it, the importance of it needs to be understood and acted upon. So then he goes on to several etiquettes, several points or manners that a teacher, an instructor should have towards students, especially towards students. So this is why I said it's relevant to everyone, not just the teacher himself. Number one is kindness, is mercy, right? It says here benevolence towards the students. The relationship has to be based on rahmah in the Arabic, right? Rahmah, mercy. And this is our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Bismillah, ar-Rahman, ar-Rahim. We could have started our lives off with any attribute. So Bismillah, we start in the name of Allah. But what are the first attributes, descriptions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we learned, that Allah taught us, is ar-Rahman and ar-Rahim. It's not just one name of mercy, it's two names of mercy. So this is our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's built on mercy. It's not built on punishment. It's not built on roughness or demand or anything. It's built on kindness. Allah gave us life. Allah gave us faculties. Allah was kind to us. Allah was generous to us. Right? This is built on this goodness and this kindness that Allah gave us. Yes, along with it comes responsibilities and so forth. But the foundation is mercy. The foundation is kindness. That's what Allah wants for us. Allah wants to show us mercy now and in the future. And similarly, therefore, we should have mercy towards the creation. Right? The famous hadith. Ar-Rahimuna yarhamuhum ar-Rahman. The merciful, Ar-Rahimuna yarhamuhum ar-Rahman. The Rahman has mercy upon them. So if you're merciful to others, so it's one of the patterns of Allah in creation, Allah will show mercy to you. Irhamu man fil ard yarhamukum man fis sama. Have mercy upon those who are on this earth, and the Lord of the heavens will have mercy upon you. Right? What we do to others is how Allah treats us, right? So I was talking about this earlier today with some of the brothers in another class. A very important point, our relationship with God Almighty, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is not merely built upon our personal, intimate relationship, interaction with God alone, with Allah alone. So we could sort of pray, fast, read Quran, go on Hajj, whatever, right? Do our own acts of worship. That is not the be-all and end-all of our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a massive element of others that impact our relationship with God, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How so? If we're good to our parents, doesn't that make us more beloved to Allah? Doesn't it strengthen our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? But what if we're bad to them? Allah's displeased with, it's a sin with Allah. So reality is, our parents are a means of getting closer to Allah or getting further away from Him, right? If we depend on us, right? So it's our responsibility to try our best to make sure we get it right with them. But not just them, everyone, your neighbors. What did the Prophet say about, I think there's a lady he mentioned, somebody said to him, there's a lady, she's really pious, and she's, outwardly, pious kind of thing, and she's really prays all night, fasts all day, but she's bad to her neighbors. Prophet ﷺ said she's in the fire. She's going to get punished, in the words, for that. So look how it has affected her relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Come on the day of judgment with masses of prayer and fasting. It doesn't rectify or change that wrong or that part of your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet said you will not enter paradise until you believe. and you will not believe until you love one another. And shall I not tell you if about something, if you did it, you will love one another? They said, of course, O Messenger of Allah. Bala ya Rasulullah. And of course, this is something that we want to know. He said, Afshu salama baynakum, spread the greeting of salam amongst you. Just say Assalamu alaikum. Isn't smiling an act of charity? I smile. All these little things, all part of that base of Iman, the foundation that we need to build to get to that perfection of Iman, right? So you won't believe, I completely believe. So if you take it backwards, you give salam to each other, it cultivates this mutual love and respect amongst you, this respect of Iman and faith and humanity, and then that cultivates your Iman, that affects your Iman. So your relationship with the society around you, when you're giving salam to them or smiling or just being good to others, charity is a good example as well. These are all acts that actually benefit you and make your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stronger. Right? So we can't neglect the social interactions we have with all, workplace, siblings, children, colleagues, nephews, nieces, extended family, classes, fellow students, at university, at college, at whatever, stage of life you're at, spouses, right? The best of you, the Prophet said, are those who are best to your wives, and I'm the best to my wives. So if you're bad to your spouse, that's a sign of spiritual decline, that's a sign of being disobedient to God Almighty. So we can see the impact of the social, settings. So this is one of those, the teacher and the student. So it's important we work both ways to get it right. So the first step is to have mercy towards the student. And in this regard, a hadith is here quoted that the Prophet ﷺ said, I am for all of you as a father is to his son. Right? And Imam Ghazali explains that he meant redeeming them from the fire of the abode of the hereafter, which is of greater imperative than the parents redeeming their children or their child from the fire of this world. Right? So it's very important. Allah says in the Quran, Qu ya ayyuhalladhina amanu qu anfusakum ahlikum nara. All who believe, save yourselves and your families. We have a responsibility to help our families, right? From the fire. Nara, which fuel is men and stones, right? Human beings and stones will be thrown and the fuel of the fire. So the Prophet ﷺ, that's the concern he had for us. If Allah is telling us to save ourselves and our families from the fire, that's a moral obligation, right? We've got to feed them and clothe them, but the ultimate obligation is to have them as upright people with good character, with morals, and to ultimately be obedient to God Almighty. That's what the Prophet wanted for us. So he wanted something for us, and he wanted it more so for us and humanity and those around him than the parents of a child would want it, because that's the concern he had as the Prophet ﷺ. That was who he was. He had more concern for us than we had for ourselves, to be honest, right? That's who he was. That was his characteristic. That's he was rahmah, right? An-nabiyyu awla bil mu'mina min anfusihim. The Prophet is closer to the believers than themselves. Surah Ahzab, right? Meaning he has more concern for you than you could ever imagine. He has more understanding of what you need than you could ever imagine, and that's why he gave us this guidance, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the teacher has that kind of responsibility, that he obviously is going to be someone who's trying to fill or follow the footsteps of the Prophet ﷺ and represent the Prophet ﷺ in this instruction of teaching, etc. So the goal isn't to teach necessarily, language, fiqh, tafsir, whatever, tajweed. The goal is to enhance the student, right? To pass on, which is one of the actual etiquettes, right? It's going to come later, to actually, try and inculcate in the student good character, not merely just instruct. And that's the difference between secular education, one of the major differences between secular education and Islamic education. In Islam, it's not about the grammar, it's not about the pronunciation, tajweed, not the only point. Obviously it is all about that, but not the only thing. Whereas on all the other education, it's just teach the subject, get out of the class, pass the exams, get the qualifications, and that's it. In Islam, every class, including this one, every form of instruction, there's a greater goal behind it, and that is to make us somewhat, that little bit, let's say, closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're a little bit better in our lives. Go home and maybe do something nice for the family. Smile a little bit more. Maybe we don't do that enough, right? But it should, the goal is to encourage us to have this sort of self-realization and self-growth, right? Work on ourselves. And that's what the Prophet ﷺ did. Whenever he was with the people around him, he was always trying to give them guidance, give them encouragement to work harder and to improve themselves. And that's the basis of Islamic education. So hence Imam Ghazali mentions it first. And that's the mercy that is built on rahmah. If you have real mercy for people, whether it's your family or others around or others, then one of the major concern you'd have for them is their ultimate welfare. And ultimate welfare and well-being is not in this life, it's in the akhirah. As much as we have to go through difficulties and illnesses and wealth and problems in this life, if we have problems in the next life, we're finished. Right? We really, if you have if we go in the wrong path and the wrong way and we haven't got anything left when we get to Allah on the Day of Judgment, then we are in a big trouble. So really it's about preparing for that ultimately. It doesn't mean we neglect this world, or we don't bother about this world. That's a moral responsibility as well, and we're commanded as Muslims to do that. But in search of that, or in pursuit of those obligations and needs that we have in this life, if we sacrifice and neglect the ultimate goal in search of that, then we're no different than anybody else. Everyone's does that, and that's not wrong. It's like I said, everybody has to do that. But there's a major responsibility on top of that for Muslims, for people of faith generally, which is their relationship with God, their return to God, their presenting their case, because we're going to be accountable. We're going to be responsible for what we've said, done, behaved. So even within those interactions, they're not like a normal mundane interaction like we just explained. They're actually part of the journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's really what it's all about, this first part. And having the teacher should have that real concern for the students, and be presenting that sort of discourse within the instruction, and always trying to attach the student to the akhirah and so forth. And then moving on to the second point, so I'm going to read as we said, I'm not going to read word for word. We'll summarize some sections. So moving on to the second translation, says function, any role you could say as well, of the teacher is to follow the example of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, of the master of the law, the conveyor of the law, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? Who's the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? So following the sunnah, following the prophetic example, not just outwardly, so not just dress code, let's say, or hairstyle or turban or something like that, but morally, character-wise. That's the real following of the sunnah, right? Many people can look like something that's like the sunnah, the prophetic example, but the real goal is to act and behave with that prophetic example and pass that on to others. And what's mentioned in this regard are certain elements of that. So one of the major elements of the prophetic example is to seek no reward, is to seek no recompense, no payment, no remuneration. That's it. It's just for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and getting closer to Him. So that's it's an act of worship. When you teach, it's not merely I don't know, like you're just doing something mundane. It's actually an act of worship. It's like praying, it's like fasting. It's an act of worship. It's not just a normal everyday service, like, you might plaster the walls. That's, great, but it's plastering the walls, fine, you get rewarded for it. You're going to get paid for it, let's say, right? That's not teaching. Teaching Islam in particular, of course, is something that's done for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you find throughout the Quran, throughout the book of Allah, wherever the prophets are mentioned, alayhi salatu wasalam, they always say, and it's a theme throughout the Quran, there's probably like easily 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 ayat, maybe, Allahu alam, many ayat throughout the Quran, maybe hundreds even, that mention the prophets saying, we do not ask you for a reward. We do not seek a reward from you. We do not ask for a recompense. Our reward is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Constantly. It's a whole surah with it. It's repeated again and again. Each prophet's story is mentioned. And within each story is constantly mentioned. The same words, Arabic is the same sentence, right? But each prophet is quoted as saying that. So whenever they presented their mission, their teachings, they never asked for anything. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam never asked for anything. La asaluka shay'an. He didn't ask for anything. He didn't ask for anything. In the Quran it says, I don't ask you for anything. Illa al-mawaddata fil qurba, except for you to love my family, right? That's not a personal thing. That's for the sake of Allah as well, as part of our religion, to love the family of the Prophet ﷺ and his, offspring. But in terms of the teaching of the deen, there should be no recompense. And then Imam Ghazali talks about this and how, unfortunately, in his time, we talked about it before a little bit as well, how it became all about learning for the sake of getting positions and money and being with the leaders, and this kind of unfortunate sort of end it had. And now we do have, and even in that time, it started a long time ago, it started hundreds of years ago, that there were payments for teachers. The Sahaba never took payments. A lot of the early generations didn't take payments, alhamdulillah. Like, they had other things. Imam Abu Hanifa, a good example, never took a payment for his teaching. He had a business, right? Imam Malik never took a payment. They were offered, money as well, and they were offered positions, but they taught sincerely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We did talk about this at a certain stage that because unfortunately the systems fell out of place that was supporting scholars, they had to take positions to get an income and money and etc. And it slowly changed over time. So it got worse over time. So Imam Ghazali was complaining about in his time, it was getting worse and worse, and unfortunately the connection of money to teaching has become a big thing now. And I think I mentioned last time how teaching the Quran if you look at it and the money involved in it, it's a multi-million pound system, whatever you call it, industry, right? Not to say that in a belittling way or anything like that, astaghfirullah. But it really has become that, right? If you look at the institutions, everything, including here, by the way, we're not immune from this, right? We charged for children to learn the Quran, etc. Because that's the system now. It wasn't like that in the past. You went to the maktab, which was built next to the masjid. There were teachers there. You were young. You learned how to read and write. They taught you the Quran, taught you basics of deen, and you would have done. Alhamdulillah, you spent a few years there, and you're done for life, and it was just there, and the reward was with those. And similarly, there was people in their homes. They'd open their doors to people, come and learn, and the children, families would send their children in the neighborhood. There would be sort of teachers, and it was all. So we've obviously we're in the UK now. We've come from different setting, wherever we're from. Some of us are from here, So it's different. And in terms of halal and haram, it's all halal. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not nobody's doing haram. But if you look at the impact it's had, let's say on a spiritual level, right, on a sort of sincerity level, what's happened? I think it's definitely had a massive change. It's not the same as before, and it's a struggle for everyone. A struggle internally, trying to find that sincerity, to find that good intention behind it, and realize that we're just doing this because this is the processes we have to do today to make it all work. But it's not ideal. We've lost that system that we originally had, and it's not easy to get it back, to be honest, especially in this part of the world where we're not got a lot of resources necessarily, or systems. I would say resources may be there, but we're not using them to set up the systems, to be honest. It's very unfortunate because Muslims have got plenty of money. That's not a problem, right? How much money was given in Ramadan? I saw an article on it, like in Ramadan, 90%. So the Islamic charities get 90% of their annual income in Ramadan. Ramadan's massive then, isn't it, right? So they're preparing the Ramadan campaigns now, by the way. So you'll start hearing about Ramadan now. And it's not bad, it's a good thing, right? But I was reading, it's in the billions what Muslims give in Ramadan. It's just a massive, massive figure, right? So we've got money. Muslims have got money if they're circulating this amount of wealth within the 1 month, let alone a whole year, right? So where is it going to? What's happening with it? A lot of it is going out of this country to other humanitarian aid, which is brilliant, alhamdulillah, we need that. But how much of it is being used to set up the systems that are going to make those projects of humanitarian aid better and more successful and more lasting and more impacting and more self-sustaining? Or is it just a case of we raise money, we feed people, they get hungry again, we raise money, we feed people, they get hungry again, and that's the cycle, right? We haven't actually set up any solutions. We're just we're just dealing with the symptoms, right, which is hunger. There's a problem that's leading to that. Who's dealing with that, right? So that's the thing. Even in our society, there's all symptoms. People don't have knowledge or people don't have understanding. That's the symptom. We can teach in one class, or somebody can grab 1 or 2 people and teach them. Okay, where's the systems that are now reaching out to them and finding them and making it sort of work or making things better to some degree. I mean, we can't rectify the whole world's problems, but we should have something there. And unfortunately, it's all a case of. That balance has been tipped. There's the mizan, there's equilibrium, and there's been a tip of that. A slight, discrepancy, slight little thing that goes wrong, mess up the whole system, right? You get a little virus, what happens to the human body? It just shuts down, reacts, illnesses, headaches, you can't put in your eyes sometime, right? You're in bed all day. And it was this little bug. If you've got a wealth, and you don't learn about zakat, you're in trouble because you might not be paying the zakat properly. We've got zakat course starting on Saturday, by the way. Right, so this Saturday, the 9th of March, we will be having a new 4-week course starting on the fiqh of zakat. It's an in-depth course. It'll be an hour session each week, talking about what necessitates giving zakat, how you pay zakat, when do you pay zakat, who you pay zakat, what you don't need to pay zakat on. A lot of your questions, it's going to be question based. So that's this Saturday, I think it's 10 to 11.
Yeah.
Yeah, 10 to 11, 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock for 4 weeks, for the remaining 4 Saturdays of March, to be precise, actually, right? So you know where to be at 10 o'clock on Saturday mornings if you want to learn about zakat. Taught by Ustaz Muhammad Ali, who's one of the teachers here on Saturdays. May Allah bless him. So yeah, you need to teach people what they need, guidance. And this is not just of the outer actions, it's of the inner actions as well, of the self-purification and so forth. Anything that leads you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that benefits you, that inspires you, that pushes you forward on the journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Studying the right subjects is mentioned here, right? Not jumping back and forth and doing this kind of thing. But if and the Imam mentions an important point here, if somebody's studying the right subjects, but not getting the right result from them, carry on. The intention isn't right, or something's not completely there, it will rectify itself. And he mentions this, that famous saying of Imam Ghazali himself. He said, "We have pursued knowledge for other than the sake of Allah, but knowledge itself refused to be for other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala." So he mentions it here himself and he explains it. He says, "Indeed, but knowledge itself refused to be other than for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The sciences intended in this statement are Quranic exegesis and science of hadith, science of Quran and Sunnah, what leads you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that which the first generation occupied themselves with." The first generation weren't talking about theological, scholastic theological kind of issues. They weren't talking about fiqh differences and, debating over these kind of things. What they were talking about Allah, His attributes, talking about the prophetic example, following Him, morals, characteristics that make one beloved to God Almighty. Those that are deep in knowledge of the abode of the hereafter and the science of inner conduct and the training of the soul. However, if the student pursues these sciences intending the benefits of this world, there is no objection to allowing him to carry on in this. For he's simply preparing himself in the hopes of providing admonition and gaining followers. So yeah, you get that knowledge, you can use it to, sound good and get followers. At one time or another in this pursuit he may awaken, as therein are sciences capable of instilling the heart with pious fear of God. So if you're learning the right things, the knowledge itself has such a power that eventually, even if you don't go with the right intention, even if you don't have the right people around you guiding you, but the knowledge itself is the right knowledge of the Quran, the Sunnah, of the hereafter, of self-rectification, self-purification, obligations. It has such a power learning that inshallah there's a hope for everyone, it will rectify them. And this is the thing, that knowledge, when you first earn money, you don't know what to do with it. When you were young and you first earned money, right? Your first wage, first time you had £1,000 in your life, right? First time you hit 1,000 plus, you were like, oh my, what am I going to do? Buy a car, buy this amazing, pair of shoes, handbag. You go a bit silly with it. You don't know what to do. I'm sure you're all mature and you know what you did with your money, but it's a phase in life when you're young and you work and you get money. It's quite exciting. But you don't have a good intention with it. You don't think, I'm going to go and, buy groceries for my family, right? Unfortunately, we don't. That's just what is it called? Youth, right? It's just, some people do. I mean, not saying that it's the case for everyone. Like I said, some people are mature. Some 10-year-olds work for their families, right? It's different around the world. I'm talking more about the general state in the UK, right? So yeah, in some parts of the world, there's kids working at 10, which is not allowed in the UK, right? So let's not talk about that. Child labor, slave labor, whatever, right? It's not allowed. So you get to a stage where you earn money and you earn more money and then you realize you can do a lot more with money. You realize you can achieve a lot more. So it has the power to take you down in some really bad places, but it also has the power to, if you just get it right once, you see the impact of your investment in a good way. It can show you, this is why I should be doing my money. Look how it helps people. Look how it gets me a benefit if I spend it in this way. So you kind of see what money is for eventually, hopefully. Knowledge is more powerful than that. Knowledge is, the more you build it up, the right knowledge, right? The more you build it up, it has such a power that it will penetrate the heart. It will, take away the darknesses, right? Knowledge is light, right? True good knowledge, right? That's why we should always try and seek that knowledge which we require and we are in need of. And then it talks about, again, so that constant struggle of, teaching for the sake of Allah, teaching for the world and the dunya, etc. Then it says the fourth function of the teacher, and among the most subtle of the art of teaching, is something I mentioned before, is deterring the student from reprehensible conduct by way of intimation to whatever extent possible. So deterring from bad conduct and, trying to, like I said, inculcate and to sort of pass on and model, to be honest, because it doesn't happen with speech, it happens with, example, the sunnah, the good behavior traits, but not, Imam Ghazali says, don't go direct. Don't be, in your face. This should not be explicit criticism. Why? Because you tell somebody to their face, what's the normal human reaction? Who are you to tell me? What's going on here? And they'll run away from your classes. They won't like it. And that's what we do when we don't want somebody in our classes. We're quite forward with them, they think, oh, this, and we never see them again. It works, right? That's for their betterment. So why do we got someone in our classes? We see that they won't benefit from us, from me as a teacher. Our teachers taught us this. It's not a bad thing, right? So if you see somebody who's not benefiting from you, who's coming and is a bit of an issue or whatever, is going to cause a class to become worse or bad influence, scare them off. And the way to scare them off is confront them with what they don't like. So you're a bit loud, you're a bit this, you're a bit that, what's going on? And he thinks, why is he singling me out for? It's for that person's betterment. Maybe with another teacher, another setting, that person will benefit, right? You've got to think of the whole group sometimes, right? The whole class. It's more informal learning, right? Not necessarily in this kind of scenario where everyone's just individuals and they come and go. It's like when you're constantly one class together and your students using the same topics. It's full time, like I said, the formal kind of thing. That is something. There's various things that you be aware of. But the point here is that if you do confront somebody with what they don't like, and it might be genuine confrontation that you've got a problem here, they won't like it. So Imam Ghazali says, be wise. Don't be in your face. This is not the way of the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam either. He didn't confront people with their bad things. He was wise. He said, why do people do such and such? He didn't say, why do you do such and such? People are doing this. So people are like, okay, that's probably me because I'm doing it, right? Let me sort myself out. He never confronted the individual. He said it indirectly, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, right? And the message was taken. And then talks about this concept of what you're forbidden from, you kind of want to do, which is the story of Adam alayhi salam and Hawa alayhi salam, and mentions here a saying, although it's mentioned as saying of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the commentary does explain that it's not. So if people were forbidden, so it's a saying just generally, if people were forbidden from crumbling dried camel droppings between their fingers, so imagine pick up droppings and crumbling them, you're not allowed to do that, they would crumble them. They would pick them and crumble them, saying, we were only forbidden from this because there's something good in it. Right, so they pick up, because if you prohibit somebody directly, don't do this, like, oh, why not? It's something special. So it entices them in a sense, right? So being direct sometimes isn't the way of nurturing people to become more obedient, resilient, disciplined, right? Discipline isn't built through direct confrontation, it's built through phase by phase, step by step wisdom. Right, so that's that part. Then it says fifth function for the one responsible for certain sciences is not to criticize or disparage other fields of learning to a student. Yeah, so do not criticize others. That's something that happens. Sometimes you might mention that this is more important than this, right? Of course, Quran is more important than other subjects, etc. But you don't belittle the other subject in support of your field, right? So this can happen. But rather, Imam Ghazali says, provide pathways from one science to another. So yes, from grammar, if they teach you learning Arabic, then the goal should be to understand the Quran. Don't belittle in that whole process theology or fiqh and say, what's the point of theology? The Quran is the source of everything, right? So go to the Quran, learn the Quran, you'll find everything. Forget about fiqh. Fiqh's just for learning about bleeding and wuzu and toilet and, divorce. What's that got to do with anything? You don't want to learn about that. You want to learn about Allah, you want to learn about, and it's true in a sense because a lot of portion of fiqh is about those things mentioned and more actually, but that doesn't give you a right to belittle that topic because it has a very important role in society, in our lives as Muslims, to practice those rulings and to adhere to them, right? And yes, there is greater goals, but don't criticize or belittle the other sciences in support of a greater sort of pursuit, which is of course the pleasure of Allah and learning about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So just don't do that. Teachers should be aware of not to kind of, talking about Islamic sciences here. The sixth function of a teacher is to confine the student to the material that is the level of his comprehension. So, be aware of so we said priorities and teach them the right things and don't step them ahead. But also when they're learning themselves, don't burden them with too much complicated things. You should understand the level of intellect of each student. And in the past, this was the case that the classes weren't based on age groups. They were based on ability. So you could have a 15-year-old class and a 50-year-old in the same class. You could have a 25-year-old and 17-year-old. It doesn't make a difference what ages. There wasn't, the school system wasn't based on, you're 7 years old, you go into the first class, then you move, and it was based on ability that if you can understand, come and sit down and learn, and we all understand this level of book. So it's based on books more so, right? So they study a book on grammar. Whoever's capable of studying would sit there and study that book. They studied a book on tafsir, that level of tafsir. Everybody understood, so they taught it. Somebody didn't understand, they said, you should go to that class. You shouldn't be teaching this. So be aware of the level of your students. And speak to them in a level they understand. Don't start giving them complicated things that they're confused. That'll probably scare them away from learning the subject. Because if you can't comprehend something, the first human reaction is, not worth studying that. Right? No, I'm not getting it. Forget it. And people give up quite quickly when that happens. And the Prophet said, speak to people according to their intellects. So this is actually a sunnah and a requirement of Sayyidina Ali said, verily there is extensive knowledge here, pointed to his chest, if only I could find those to bear its burden. I can't pass it on to anybody, I need to find the right people to pass it on to. So be aware of the people that you pass on your knowledge to. And there's a whole section on that, not quoting Isa alayhi salam, to not put necklaces around the neck of swine, quoting Imam Shafi's poetry where he said, the last line of it, whoever grants knowledge to the ignorant wastes it. Whoever forbids it to the worthy has committed an injustice. So give knowledge to those who deserve it. That's actually an obligation. And that's mentioned here as well. Whoever withholds knowledge when it's required, that's a sin. Such a sin that on the day of judgment he'll come with a bridle. He'll be dragged in a bridle of fire like a horse is dragged, right? By withholding knowledge when it's required, when it's beneficial to people and you don't give it, that's actually a sin, right? So kitman al-ilm is something that's not allowed. Seventh function of a teacher is to teach the poorly prepared student and the clear evident aspects that befit him, not to mention to him that beyond this there are minutiae, minute details that he is keeping hidden from him, i.e., again, a similar kind of concept of, understanding the level of the student, but also the aptitude of every individual. Don't complicate things, right? So similar to the previous one as well. And don't cause, the person to kind of get upset about learning, etc. Number 8, the 8th function of the teacher is to apply his knowledge. It's the first function really, but it's mentioned as number 8 here. Otherwise his deeds belie his words, right? Act on your knowledge, right? Only true knowledge is that which benefits to yourself and others. Firstly yourself, right? Knowledge only increases from giving it to other people. Everything decreases when you give it away, apart from 2 things: knowledge and wealth. Wealth increases when you give it for the sake of Allah with the right intention. It doesn't decrease. مَا نَقَصَ مَالٌ مِّن صَدَقَةٍ, the Prophet said. Wealth has never decreased from giving charity. Your knowledge will not decrease if you share it with the people, but you need to act on it as well. You need to make sure you are really benefiting from your knowledge as well, and part of the responsibility of having knowledge to share it as well. This is an example of the guiding teacher in relation to the seeking student is like the example of the engraved stamp on damp clay, right? So you've got a piece of clay and there's a stamp on it, right? That's what it should be, right? This is what it should be, that you see the imprint of knowledge, and that's where it's coming. That's where. So the scholar is the one stamping, right? Why? Because he's softened the student and he has the ability to pass on the teachings. Whereas if there's no effect on the student, then it shows that there's no substance in the teacher. Then the final thing says, for this reason, Sayyidina Ali stated, the 2 men have broken my back, a shameless scholar and a devout fool. The uneducated servant deceives people with his pious behavior, right? Devout fool. The uneducated servant deceives people with his pious behavior, while the shameless scholar drives them away from religion by his reprehensible conduct, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. That ends chapter 5, which was on different topics to do with the teacher, the student, etiquettes, and the next chapter, it starts on sort of the afatu talab al-ilm, the sort of drawbacks. So it says here, the perils of the pursuit of knowledge. And so some of the difficulties, drawbacks, challenges, negative things that can arise, let's say, from seeking knowledge that are against you. So we need to be aware of them. And that's a new topic for next week. So like we said, there's no previous attendance required. If you drop into any week, we'll be discussing something new, something, sort of separate from what's preceded. So if you have never been before, you're welcome. And if you missed a gap, you can always come again after a few weeks. It's not a problem. I know Ali's regular, mashallah. But it's really beneficial. This book is an amazing book. Like I said to you, Imam Ghazali is preparing you. It's a book 1 of 40. So he's not just doing this one book and leaving you. He wants you to prepare you for the whole journey, your life. So he's really put he put everything into this book, by the way, just to let you know. He gave his all for this book to be his legacy. And it has been, by the way. This book has benefited millions and millions of Muslims, right? The famous saying, as some of you may know, that if the sciences of Islam were lost, if Islam was lost, we would just need this book to revive it again, right? This book would be enough to get everything back, right? Obviously not every minute detail, but enough for us to reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is a beautiful book full of benefit for all Muslims. All Muslims should try and read parts of this book and benefit from it, inshallah ta'ala. Hopefully you'll join us on our weekly drop-ins on Tuesday evenings, 7:30 to 8:30. Jazakumullah khair, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. But questions, of course, we always give time for your questions. So we've got 10 minutes. Sometimes I go over, but I saw the time and the end of the section anyway, and I want you to ask questions. So anybody got any questions, sister? Any questions? No? Any questions here? Ladies first. No? Brothers? No? Tariq, question? Sorry, your name, brother?
Joe.
Joe, welcome, Joe. MashaAllah, nice to see you. MashaAllah. First time, right?
Yeah.
Good to have you. Ali?
One question. When Ghazali talks about people who pursue knowledge
Mm-hmm.
and this, keep on practicing as long as the knowledge has sacredness.
Yeah.
But then earlier on in the chapters, he mentioned that one of the diseases of the time that people are immersed in knowledge.
Yeah.
But they've become dry to it, they're not practicing.
They're not practicing it. So what I said in that section, I tried to emphasize it, I don't know if it came across, was what Imam Ghazali was saying was those, so he does mention in there that people go into like debate knowledge and all that. I didn't want to go in that today because we've said it many times, but he does mention that. He's talking about the knowledge that isn't essential. So when Imam Ghazali is saying that knowledge has become a barrier, it's become problematic, it's this, people need to stop, rectify themselves and act upon the knowledge kind of thing, he's talking about the extra knowledge, right? The sciences, when we talked about these muqaddimat and these different types of sciences, talking about those extra things, not the essential things you need to learn. If you're learning the essentials, if you don't know how to pray, you're learning how to pray, and yeah, it's not really benefiting you, you shouldn't stop learning that. You need to keep on learning. Purification and prayer are essential. That knowledge is the one that has the power to change you. That knowledge is the one that, even if it's not benefiting you initially, and you've learnt it, and we learn how to pray and fast and all these things, and we grow up and we don't practice it. But it was good that we learnt it, because tomorrow when we do want to learn to pray, we do want to practice prayer, or we do want to do something, we have a good idea of where it was. So it's a blessing that we're sent to mosque by our parents. We might not want to go, the madrasa or whatever it is. But later on in life, when we grow up and we realize and we awaken, because everybody has an awakening, a reality, right? Hearts turn. Really good book, by the way. Please get that. I don't get no royalties from Sidi Harun, Michael. May Allah bless him. But really, I just love the book. Probably read about half of it by now. I'm trying to finish it. There's loads of amazing stories. Actually, one of the people they had in the book, I think his name was the gangster. He was in London, so they went to the London event. They actually had him there speaking, and it was really powerful. There's a video on Facebook they did. It was very powerful. This is what I think it shows you that real life experiences are what count. And that's what Imam Ghazali is saying, that that knowledge is there. You'll have an impact, because life will get. Real life will impact you at one stage. And then you need this knowledge. It's not much we can do without as Muslims. Prayer, purification, our beliefs, morals, characteristics. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, about Him, about the akhirah, the day of judgment. We can't neglect that. So we've got to teach our children. Yes, every single person is going to have a roller coaster of a ride in life, from here to there, from practicing, non-practicing, from, obedience, disobedience. But as long as we've planted the seed, right, that's what Imam Ghazali said. This is the seed of success. This is the seed of salvation, right? Iman, faith. Then hopefully, whatever happens, they'll be safe, right? There'll be some good there in them to help them on their journey. And that's the impact of that knowledge. It's knowledge that's what it is. And it might seem burdensome when we put our children through all this, but really it's, it should be done more wisely and nicely and everything, right? I don't agree with some of the systems in place, but it's a blessing that we are taught when we're young, and we don't even like it, alhamdulillah. We can say that now, but kids aren't going to say that. Kids are going to complain, I want to go to the boxing, I want to go to the football, I don't want to go to that. But alhamdulillah, they'll realize how important it was later on.
Is that more as a result of the modern educational system, whereas in the old days, even going back to the Greek times, they would teach basic capability and the level of the children wasn't?
Yeah, more, and I still say it exists in parts of the world. Yeah, maybe the British education system, modern British education system doesn't, and in the past it probably did have a lot more, social skills, economics. It was something that you teach people how to sew, cook, manage time, money management, bookkeeping. So bookkeeping is one of the things they study traditionally in Islamic courses, like bookkeeping as in accounts. Like, you need to know that when you grow up. If you're going to manage money, accounts, spending, because people today are in debt. It's a massive problem today, because they don't know how to just do basic money management, right? So, or they've gone into the culture of debts or whatever, right? So the problem is with the systems, yeah. I think they are less so here, and they were here though. That's the problem. In the name of advancement and capitalism really and money making and all that, and the systems they might have brought a lot of developments outwardly, and it might have brought a lot of ease into people's lives and a lot of functionality, whatever you want to call it, but they come with their challenges. Let's say they come with their drawbacks, and one of them probably is the fact that there's a lot less skills amongst people, right? They can use a mobile phone amazingly, but they can't even take a screw out of something. How do you call the engineer, call the plumber? Like, just a screw. He'll come around, he'll change it, he'll charge you 50 quid, and he'll be happy as well. But that's what happens today, right? So get into some practical skills, and you make a lot of money these days because it's getting more and more in demand. There's a big shortage, by the way. I don't know if you know, they're a bit short on manual labour, skilled labour. That it's getting short, and that's why they need people to come in from abroad. Then they complain about the immigration system, and these people are coming from these other parts of the world, let's say, and they're taking our jobs. You don't want to do them, and the British government know that, by the way, and that's why they've opened the borders, and that's why they want people to come in. That's why they have. It's just a weird system, right? It's not really. Don't know where we're going with it.
You say, for example, a mobile phone now is one of the most advanced pieces of text that humans.
I've got a new name for it, by the way, just so you carry on. Everybody, they're called, what they called? No, I got a new name for them, silly phones. That's the new name for them now. They're not smartphones, they are silly phones, right? That's what they call it. Call them from now on. Sorry, what you going to say?
It's the most advanced technological achievement in the history of mankind. It can have the entire history of civilization.
In that.
And we use it, and people use it for filters to put
yeah. With the tongue sticking out and stuff, right? La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, yeah. So yeah, that's what life has come, right? We can do such a tool can get us so much and such greatness or ability to get somewhere. It can be used for something so, I don't know, mundane and silly, but that shows you life where we've reached, right? The technology is there, and that same technology can do that as well. It's weird. It's a weird one.
I read this quote online, it was Harvard or somewhere, it said that if aliens ever did invade, and they would marvel at our technology, and look at what we did with it, and they would finish off just
Yeah. Any other questions from anyone? Yes, go ahead.
When you say love the neighbour, I've got a neighbour and she broke up her marriage and she's spreading information to other neighbours. She does little things like parks in front of my house. So how am I meant to react with her? Still love her, or like me and my husband are back together now?
Alhamdulillah, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. No, obviously, when people harm you, if they're your neighbours, they're your family members, then harm is an injustice, it's a wrong. Harm is not allowed in Islam, so they're committing haram. So we can't just accept it and say, because they're my neighbour, because they're my family member, it's harm. We have to put a stop to it. We have to take the measures and procedures to avoid harm. That's Islam. It doesn't accept harming others physically, emotionally, all forms of harm. So that's what you should do. You take the right means to sort of prevent that harm or stop it if it started, etc. And of course, there might be some ill feelings with that because of the harm. And everybody feels that. If somebody harmed me, I do feel bad towards people that have harmed me, and I try and get it out of my heart. I've said that before, you should try and get it out of your heart. But it's not an easy thing, is it, to just remove it overnight? It's an amazing thing, and it's actually for your benefit if you can remove it. It's for yourself that if you can remove that resentment and, rancor, whatever you want to call it, ill feelings. But it's human nature to have it. So what should you feel towards them? How should you do them? You should try your best to keep an outward level of etiquette, good manners, behavior, and try in the inside to remove that sort of upset, that ill feeling, that hate, let's say, it's a strong word, but that hate you have. Because we have it. I have it towards people. Not that I have many people to hate, alhamdulillah. Some people have more people to hate. I don't have anybody to hate, alhamdulillah, right? You make it up yourself sometimes, right? I just want to relate to you that there may well be something there. I don't know if I have. I might think of something and I'll think, oh yeah, I hate that person, so I don't want to think that. So get it out of your mind. Obviously, if your neighbour, you can't get it out of your mind. You think they're with you every day. So it's hard to separate that emotion from that person, because that brings it back. This is how our brain networks things, that you see that person, that harm comes back, all that, that evil that happened, that wrong that happened. So it's hard, it's very hard, but it's a struggle. That's one of the struggles. Sometimes people are poor and they struggle for money. Sometimes people have to put up with the harm of somebody in their family or their neighbour in your case. It's a struggle just to keep the adab. So you don't do anything wrong back to them, no. You don't use bad language, you don't use harm on them, you don't but you have to protect yourself. You have to take the means to keep them away from harming you, and etc., etc. So take those means, and that's nothing wrong with that, and try and remove any ill feelings from your heart. I suppose that's the advice I would give. Hope that helps. Yeah. There was a question online. Bismillah, we welcome it. We've got time. Last question, because we do have go to the class.
Salam Sheikh, can you please share some details regarding Aqsa Tour in Ramadan? So I'll see the audience.
Question online about the Aqsa Tour in Ramadan. So I'll just tell you the details. Sold out.
Okay.
Wait for the next one now. So to encourage you to sign up for the next one and early, because it's sold out, we're taking a small group of 20. So it's 20 people, and that's what we're taking. And the organizers, I'm organizing it. One of the organizers has said that they want to increase the numbers, the comfortable number. They're going to go on a trip, etc. So it's full. But what I would recommend or say about that is, if you see an opportunity to go to any Islamic land or any Islamic, relics and history that is connected to our religion, about history of the world, to be honest, because we should discover everything as Muslims, but especially if it's more Islamic, or it's going to have a relationship, more intimate relationship with it, then you should, if you have the means and ability and the time, you shouldn't hesitate to sign up. You shouldn't hesitate to go for it, whether it's Aqsa, whether it's Umrah, whether it's a trip to Turkey and looking at the stuff there, or whatever, as long as it's safe and organized well and etc. Bismillah. So that particular one I won't go into because it's full now, but generally that's why I would encourage people to experience. That's an experience, like talking about the book Heart's Turn. Experiences by traveling, is by going out there. You don't get it sitting at home on your TV screen. That's not an experience. That's called virtual reality. It's not reality, is it? It's reality, that TV screen. It's just electromagnetic waves, isn't it? Just hitting a screen, like electrons hitting a screen, and you're watching these electrons, and it shows you things, and it's not reality. It's not experience. It's really bad. Yeah, and people at home are thinking we're doing exactly that right now. That's technology. It can be used in good ways and bad ways, but yeah, it doesn't give you the same experience though. So you need to attend in person. Yeah, that'll have much more impact on you. That's much more beneficial to sit in person, and that's what we had with our teachers. It was that relationship firsthand. That's what Sidi Michael Sugic wrote in his book. It wasn't stories of dreams. It was reality people went through. So you can relate to it so much, and it's something that can impact you, inshallah ta'ala. Yeah, so go on these trips, go on these journeys, experience firsthand history, Islam, different cultures. A really, really beautiful thing to do, and to invest in. I've never shied away from that kind of stuff for myself, my family. It's a good investment. And that's the end of today's session. Jazakumullah khairan, and we'll see you next week, inshallah, 7:30. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.